Greetings and welcome. We are in Senior English A, and we now are going to ask a simple question, and we're going to try and give some specific answers. What is an Elizabethan sonnet? A sonnet written during the time of Queen Elizabeth. If you need a working date for your notes, write it down as simply 1600. Okay? So in 1600, when they're writing these things called sonnets, what specifically is that? By extension, the question now will be as well, if I have to write a sonnet, and I probably will, what exactly is it that I'm writing? What does it look like? Now, to help you do this project, I've recommended you open your hymnal to page 276, and we're going to look at one of the most famous sonnets ever written by a cat named Shakespeare. You've probably heard of him, right? And the sonnet that we're going to look at is his Sonnet 116. Now, I'm not going to explain, or in detail, this sonnet as much as we're going to be looking at level 2B, that is to say, just the rhetoric of this poem. What makes it a sonnet? Very simple. Three things. Three things. So we're going to write down three things that make a sonnet as an Elizabethan, or what we will sometimes refer to as a Shakespearean sonnet. Depending upon which cat wrote the sonnet, we can have different understandings of what's happening within the sonnet. But fundamentally, there's three things these sonnets all do. And when you have to write your sonnet, I will expect you to write your sonnet as a Shakespearean sonnet or an Elizabethan sonnet. So that's kind of why I'm giving you these guidelines. Number one, fairly easy. All this stuff is actually pretty easy. All right? Number one, you got to have 14 lines. It can't be 13, it can't be 15, it's got to be 14. Dude, what's up with that? Blame it on the Italians. Are you ready for that? When in doubt, blame it on the Italians. Famous way to say it, right? It's real simple. The Italians kind of start playing a game. I would write it this way. It is a game. It's almost like a contest, where they will say, we're going to write within a certain kind of form. Hey, how about this? You're at the park one afternoon in a summer, and from 3 blocks away, you can hear a car driving towards you, and you immediately know that the music that's being played inside of that car or that truck is rap. Now, how do you know that? Well, because there's a certain kind of driving rhythm to that music that allows you to immediately know that the music you're listening to is rap. Of course, people who don't appreciate or understand rap will say it all sounds the same. Those of us who listen to that music say you're completely mistaken, right? But nonetheless, there's a certain kind of form that is understood to make it rap. And then artists try to be creative within the form. Does that make sense? Sonnet writing is the same way. Think of it as a big Nike shoebox. It's a contest. How much stuff can you fit inside the shoebox? But the shoebox is exactly the same size for everybody. That's this game, and the Italians are the ones that kind of invent it, and then the English decide to try it, only they're going to try it not in Italian, but in the English language. Rule 1, 14 lines. Rule 2, I told you there are 3 rules, right? Rule 2, well, there's this thing about the last word of each line. It's what we will call rhyme scheme. Okay? Rhyme scheme. And there's going to be an understanding of, I'm going to use an academic term here, poetic intentionality. What do I mean by that? Well, it's not random. It's intentional. This rhyme scheme. Do you got me? In other words, there's going to be an understanding that as the poem was actually written, the poet would actually use as the last word of certain lines words that would rhyme with the last word of other lines. And there's an actual order to this. It's not just like random, it's intentional. There's an order to it. This is kind of esoteric. Can you give me an example? I can. In fact, I can offer you one of the classic examples in all of sonnet writing, and it's the great Shakespeare. The same guy who wrote, of course, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, and Hamlet, and all the other great plays. Now I'm with you on page 276, and let's just take a look at this poem real quickly, Sonnet 116. Okay? He numbered his sonnets. All right? This just happened to be number 116 that he wrote. Okay? Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it's an ever-fixed mark. Looks on tempest and is never shaken. It's the start of every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown of those height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come, blah, 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 blah. You can see it. Let's check to make sure it's a sonnet at 14 lines. Are there 14 lines there? There are, aren't there, right? But what about this thing called rhyme scheme? Well, let's take a look at it. Notice the last word of the first line is the word minds. The last word of the second line is the word love. Doesn't rhyme with minds, does it? But look at the last word of the third line, finds, right? It rhymes with minds, doesn't it? Now, when we're identifying this rhyme scheme, and you'll write it in your notes, and I think it'll make sense once you look at this poem closely. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G, G. The last two lines, if this be errant upon be proved, I never written or no man ever loved, rhyme together for the last one, G, G. Go back over it again. First four lines we call it quatrain, qua meaning four. A, B, right? Take a look at it. Now, you're going to argue that love and remove don't really rhyme, but this is what we will call sight rhyme. Notice that the words, the way they're spelled, see them? What are the last three letters of both words? See how that works? It looks like rhyming, doesn't it? Right? Love and remove, it looks like rhyming. Notice mark, bark, shaken, taken. There's your second four lines, second quatrain, right? Only notice none of those words rhyme with any of the words that are the last words from the first four lines, which is again why we're going to go to new letters, right? So the first four lines, A, B. Second four lines, right? See how it works? And on we go, right? So again, the rhyme scheme, A, B, C, D, C, D. You can keep playing the game, E, F, G, G. See how it works? So the first rule of sonnet writing is 14 lines. Second rule of sonnet writing is you've got to have this understanding of rhyme scheme. And when we look at different sonnets by, for example, Spenser and Sidney, we're going to realize that maybe the rhyme scheming and organization on that count is a little bit different. We're looking at a Shakespearean sonnet because it's the one that we're going to try to emulate and write ourselves when we write a sonnet. So you already know, if you have to write your own sonnet now, two things. One, you're writing 14 lines, not 15, not 13, 14 lines. Two, you've got to figure out the last word of lines so that the last word of the first line rhymes with the last word of the what? Third line, right? The last word of the second line has to rhyme with the what? Last word of the fourth line, and then you're going to start all over at line 5 and you're going to play the same game again. Okay? When you actually publish your sonnet, that is to say print it and hand it in to me, you're going to be sure down the left-hand side, write this down, that you are numbering 1 through 14 your lines. Down the left-hand side. So you can be sure that you got 14 lines. Down the right-hand side at the end, you're actually going to use your letter scheme. A, B, right? Last word of line 1 has to rhyme with the last word of line 3. The last word of line 2 has to rhyme with the last word of line 4. See how that works? All the way down, you're going to do that on the right-hand side. Okay? But wait a minute. You said there were 3 things that make a sonnet a sonnet. I did. The first is 14 lines. You already wrote that down. The second is what we call rhyme scheme of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G. The final 2 lines rhyming together. Again, back to our poem, if this be errant upon me proved, I never written and no man ever loved. Okay? They rhyme. Now, finally, to the third thing that makes a sonnet, and I got to be honest, oftentimes this is the most confusing, but it's actually the simplest. It's actually even the simplest to do, believe it or not. It's what we call the use of Imbic Pentameter. Now, don't run from a new term, okay? We're students, we're scholars. We're not afraid of a new concept or a new idea. So, let's look at it. Imbic Pentameter. We're going to write the term down, and then we're going to try and define it. Imbic Pentameter, okay? Simple. The way the words sound. This is what we will call rhythm. Unintentional rhythm. Do you got me? Okay? So there's a special kind of rhythm that we're going to call Imbic Pentameter. But dude, you haven't told me what that is. How about this? Let's hear it first before we actually even define it, shall we? I'm back with you on page 276 and the Sonnet 116. All right? I'm going to look at the very end of the poem. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be errant upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. Now that's one way to say it. But there's another way to slow this line down and start to hear something quite interesting. Watch it again. If this be errant upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. Or, how about this? If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Go ahead and keep reading it while I do it. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. I never writ nor no man ever loved. You can actually move your lips right now, although it's silent, and say it for yourself, the final line. I never writ nor no man ever loved. I never writ nor no man ever loved. Watch my hands now. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. I never writ nor no man ever loved. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Got me. Now that ba-bum is what we call a foot of iambic. Unstressed, stress. Ba-bum. Unstressed, stress. Ba-bum. Right? 5 of them, pentameter. Pent means 5, doesn't it? Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Do you got me? I never writ nor no man ever loved. Whoa, wait a minute. Are you telling me that this entire poem, every line, does this? It does. It is the star to every wandering bark. It is the star to every wandering bark. And all of a sudden, that word intentional starts to have some meaning. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you telling me this cat wrote this entire poem following iambic pentameter in every line? I'm going to blow your mind now. It was lost on you when you were a freshman because you were young and stupid, but now it's going to blow your mind. Are you ready for this? In your freshman year, you studied a play. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their lives. Oh, wait a minute. 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new immunity. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. That cat wrote the entire play of Romeo and Juliet. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. The entire play is written in iambic pentameter. The only time it breaks is when there's fighting happening in that play. Happens once or twice, doesn't it? When there's beautiful rhythms happening in the play, right? Iambic pentameter. But when there's fighting, the rhythm gets broken. And then Shakespeare comes right back to ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. No kidding. The entire play. They have a word for that. It's called genius, right? Okay? Shakespeare, of course, is known as our greatest poet as well because of these sonnets that he writes, where he plays the game of iambic pentameter. Now watch my whiteboard, right? And we'll go back to that final line of 116 now that I've got your attention. And several of you are going, okay, I may not like this crap, but I got to appreciate this is like a really fine-sounding engine when it's running. You know what I mean? Everything's perfect. Take a look at that final line again. If this be errant upon me proved, I never writ nor no man ever loved. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Watch my whiteboard. When we want to do this, if we've got the words, I never writ nor no man ever loved, the line, and I want to show this on paper, I do what I call scanning the poem, S-C-A-N, scanning the poem. It allows for me to break it up. Watch this. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. See that? I never writ nor know man ever loved. When I get that ba-bum, I draw a little diagonal line. See how that works? Or a little up and down line, okay? Above it then I can write my numbers. I never writ nor know man ever loved. See how that works? Above the actual words, I'm just going to put an unstressed stressed, ba-bum, right? So I'm going to do this, unstressed stressed. I never writ nor know man ever loved. Ba-bum. See how that is? Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. To make it iambic. Ba-bum is iambic. Okay? And what's interesting is the English language, we speak most of the time in iambic. We do. We speak most of the time in iambic without realizing it. Follow and play a game with me real quickly. On the paper in front of you, try and write a line of iambic pentameter. I do not care what you say. I wish that I was someplace else right now. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Go ahead, give it a try. Just anything. I don't care what it is. Write anything, random. Just start coming up with words. And of course you're going to look like some kind of bag person on the streets of Denver, right? Because you're going to be muttering to yourself. Your lips are going to be moving, right? Because you're trying to get the rhythm. Ba-bum, or you're going to be tapping your pen or, snapping your finger. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Go ahead, give it a try really quickly and write anything down. I wish that I was someplace else right now. By the way, you get extra points, of course, if you use some vulgar word while you do it. No, I'm kidding. But you can try, right? You can try. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Go ahead, give it a try. And you're just trying to write anything down. I wish that I was someplace else right now. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. By the way, if you have any songs, lyrics memorized, write them down and then see if they're iambic. The odds are, way over 70% of the time, they will be. How come? Because it's the rhythm of the English language. We like this. It is the rhythm of the English. See how that plays that game? Ba-bum, ba-bum. Iambic we use a lot. Pentameter, of course, is that 5 beats, right? Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. See if you can invent a single line of iambic for yourself. Of course, if you're able to get one, maybe you can get 2, right? Of course, if you can write 4 of them, you've written what we call a quatrain, right? And you're going to try and rhyme the last word of the first line with the last word of the third line. Last word of the second line with the last word of the fourth line to give us our first quatrain. Remember, how many lines of this are we doing? 14. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Now, in the sonnet that you write, we are not looking for greatness, we're looking for practice. Do you understand the distinction? I'm not really that interested in you writing a poem that you consider to be an outstanding work of art, but rather I want you to practice this whole idea of iambic pentameter, a certain kind of intentional rhyme scheme, and of course 14 lines of it. All right? Finally, observations. You will do this much better, I have found with my students, if you will just memorize at least a few lines of iambic. If you've memorized a few lines of iambic, it will help you to be able to write your own lines. I never writ nor know man ever loved. And you can always go back to that single line. I never writ nor know man ever loved. Got me? To memorize an entire sonnet is not a bad project. And if you're going to memorize one, Sonnet 116 is a pretty decent one. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. We can talk about that one later, and I think I've already got a lecture posted on LearnStrong for you about Sonnet 116 and Shakespeare's brilliance in this poem. I just want you to understand what a sonnet is. 14 lines of iambic pentameter following an intentional rhyme scheme of A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. Now I've done that, introduced you to this in about 15 or 20 minutes, and now you at least have some sense. What you'll begin to do, if you pay attention, is listen to people talking, slow it down, and recognize they're talking in iambic. Oh, did you realize you're talking in... You'll even point it out, and they'll be like, what is wrong with you? What are you talking about? No, you're using iambic. As you're talking, I can hear ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. I can hear that you're... that ba-boom. We love that kind of rhythm which is why when you get one of those automated machines that's not really a human voice, that's one of the reasons why you can immediately tell it's not a human voice. You can hear the rhythm is wrong. They're not talking quite. You know, like everything's kind of flatline and there is no kind of inflection in there. See, you notice it, right? But the minute that you know human speech, you know it because of those certain kinds of rhythms. Okay? So there you go. Welcome to an introduction to Elizabethan sonnet writing. And you're even going to get a chance to try it yourself. Hurrah. Thank you.